you could join us on this Shabbat or whatever day you are watching this message. We are finishing a series today called The Cathedrals in Time, which is helping us to prepare for the feasts of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, which begin next week. The phrase cathedrals in time comes from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and he said, "The Sabbaths are our great cathedrals. Jewish ritual may be characterized as the art of significant forms in time, as architecture in time." It is returning to God, in this returning to God, what we call teshuvah, that we prepare ourselves for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And we are preparing with repentance, atonement, and celebration. These holidays focus on Rosh Hashanah, which focuses on repentance, which is announced with the sounding of the shofar. Atonement, which is understood through the lens of fasting and surrender, is what we do on Yom Kippur. And celebration with an 8-day feast, enjoying all that God has provided for us with great joy in the festival of Sukkot. As we prepare for these days, we've been talking about the last 3 weeks and this now 4th week. The next step in our teshuvah, in the turning around, returning to God, is understanding unconditional meaningfulness. It comes from Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist and a Holocaust survivor, in a book that he wrote called Man's Search for Meaning. In it, he says this: "What is demanded of man is not as some existential philosophers teach, to endure the meaninglessness of life, but rather to bear his incapacity to grasp its unconditional meaningfulness in rational terms." Now, unconditional meaningfulness, according to Frankl, is life has meaning regardless of circumstances, and that the value of human life is unconditional. There is an unconditional meaningfulness to your life. You matter because you are here. Your life, your work, your relationships, your impact on whatever the circle of people that you are given matters. We don't always know how it matters. We often feel like it doesn't matter at all. And you don't know how God uses your story in life to have an impact. Now, this relates to Shabbat and the purpose of these wonderful cathedrals in time we've been talking about the last few weeks, that we design and we create and we work for 6 days. And on Shabbat, we enjoy what we work for and who we work for. That is what Shabbat and the holidays are for, to cease, to stop, to pause and enjoy whatever God has given us, to enjoy creation and family and community and purpose and meaning, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And when God gave the Jewish people Shabbat as a commandment to cease from work, the Torah actually gives 2 different reasons for Shabbat. The first we've been talking about throughout this series, that there's this 7-day cycle which God has built into the fullness of joy and stopping. And you cannot experience joy in this world if you don't stop. That's what Shabbat means in Hebrew. It doesn't mean rest. It means to cease. So God commands the Jewish people to remember the Shabbat in the 10 Commandments. He says in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 8, "Remember Yom Shabbat to keep it holy. You are to work 6 days and do all of your work. But the 7th day is a Shabbat to Adonai your God. In it you shall not do any work, not you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your outsider that is within your gates. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the 7th day. Thus Adonai blessed the day of Shabbat and made it holy." It's a completely other day. It's the day that all the other completely other days are based on. Then in the other telling of the 10 Commandments in Deuteronomy, God seems to give a different reason for Shabbat. It says in Deuteronomy 5, verse 15, "You must remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Adonai your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, Adonai your God commanded you to keep the day of Shabbat." So what does Shabbat have to do with the Exodus from Egypt? If Shabbat means ceasing and to enjoy the goodness of creation, then there is a liberation, there's a freedom in being able to stop your work. Because we are no longer slaves. We were slaves in Egypt. God set us free. Slaves cannot stop working. Slaves do not get to choose to stop working. Slaves are not even allowed to make any decisions for themselves. But someone who is free can choose to stop. They can stop working and cease from their work and celebrate all that we have done in our work. Free people can choose to not work. Of course, in our culture, in the Western world, we are all slaves to work in different ways. We love the hustle and the grind, and everyone's participating in a rat race to get the most cheese, and we work harder, better, and more than everyone else to get the most out of our job and make the most money. And these things are not bad in and of themselves. Work gives us purpose. Work gives us money so we can enjoy things. Money enables us to do more things and to have more things. Ceasing from work is a privilege and a gift to enjoy all that we work for with the people we are supposed to enjoy this life with, our families and our communities. Heschel said this. He said the meaning of the Sabbath is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live in the tyranny of the things of space. On the Sabbath, we try to become attuned to holiness in time. Remember, on the sixth day, God looked at everything that he made, and he said, it is tov meod. It's very good. Then on the seventh day, he ceased from creating, and he called the day he ceased from work, ceasing, Shabbat. That the seventh day is included in the narrative of creation because it's the day he ceases from creating to enjoy what he created. Now, around the 8th century, each of the holy days were given a book of the Bible that you read for the celebration. And the book that is traditionally read for Sukkot is Ecclesiastes for the Feast of Tabernacles, which is centered on joy. It seems counterintuitive because Sukkot is a festival of joy. But many people read and view the book of Ecclesiastes as depressing. Rabbi Michael Fox says this in his commentary on Ecclesiastes. He says, Ecclesiastes gives voice to an experience not usually thought of as religious. The pain and frustration engendered by an unblinking gaze at life's absurdities and injustices. But the teacher, in Hebrew, Kohelet, the voice of the one in Ecclesiastes, observes, along with life's absurdities and injustices of this world, is a firm belief in the power, justice, and unpredictability of the God of Israel. So Ecclesiastes 1 in verse 2, it says, futile, futile, says Kohelet, the teacher, completely meaningless. Everything is futile. Now, the word hevel, which is translated as meaningless or vanity or futile, is used in, it has many different translations, but the truth is the word hevel means smoke or vapor. The word is used 40 times over the 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes, and in that verse we just read, it's used 4 times in the second verse of the book. Hevel is used in thought experiments throughout Ecclesiastes. There are examples that the teacher gives throughout the book of enigmas or paradoxes. There are things that happen in life that don't make any sense. If you do the right thing in life, you don't always get what you deserve. That's Hevel. If you don't do the right things in your life, you don't always get what you deserve. That's also Hevel. It doesn't mean meaningless. More likely, it means the word hevel is the meaning isn't clear. You don't know the meaning, and you probably never will. The word hevel is smoke. It's vapor. It's this temporary, fleeting thing like life. It's confusing, disorienting, and uncontrollable, and quickly fades away. The goal of the teacher of Kohelet in Ecclesiastes is not to make you depressed. It's to humble you. Remember, Frankl says unconditional meaningfulness is life has a meaning regardless of circumstances, and that the value of human life is unconditional. There's an unconditional meaningfulness to your life. You matter because you're here. Your life, your work, your relationships, your impact on whatever the circles of people that you're given matters. We don't always know how it matters. We don't often feel like we matter at all. And you don't know how God uses your story in life to have an impact on people. The teacher continues in verse 3 of Ecclesiastes chapter 1. He says, "What does a person gain in all his labor that he toils under the sun?" This phrase from the Hebrew, under the sun, is tied to the word hevel, which is used 40 times. Under the sun is repeated 30 times throughout Ecclesiastes. Because life under the sun is hevel. If it's all hevel, it's smoke you can't catch. No matter what you do, there's some things that don't make any sense. They're hevel. Life under the sun can be hevel because there are so many things that we can't understand and we try to understand that we'll never understand in this life. It's the tension of all the tov and all of the ra, the good and the bad of this life, that we cannot even grasp or have the capacity in rational thought to measure the meaningfulness of life, because it's all hevel. Life is hevel. You can't grasp it, and there is a meaning. You just don't know what it is. God knows. We don't. The teacher continues in verse 4, and he says, "Look, a generation comes and a generation goes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets, and it hurries back to the place it rises. The wind goes towards the south and circles around to the north. Round and round it swirls about, ever returning to its circuits. All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they go again. All things are wearisome. No one can express them. The eye is never satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing." It is all unconditional meaningfulness. Look, in 100 years, none of us will be remembered. No one will write books about us. No one will quote us. And that doesn't mean that your life was not meaningful or impactful. To teach generations after us to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. I don't need people to quote me. I just want people to understand and live by the scriptures. My quotes aren't going to last. And if my sermons push people in this generation to live life to their potential, and they read and reread the Bible for the rest of their lives and apply the scriptures to their decision making, well, that's all a preacher can hope for. Then people will come along in every generation who will do the same until Yeshua comes back for their generation. Now, that could make you sad, or it can give you reason to make this one life we've been given both joyful and full of meaning. See, we design, we create, we work for 6 days. And on Shabbat, we enjoy what we work for and those we work for. That is what Shabbat and these holy days that we are approaching are for, to cease, stop, pause, enjoy whatever God has given you under the sun, to enjoy creation, family, community, and purpose, to love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. I love how Francis Chan says it. He says, our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter. Tim Mackey says it this way, that wisdom books compel us to an honest faith. It's willing to acknowledge the presence of doubt that we cannot diminish and questions that we can't always fully answer given our human limitations. Dostoevsky said it this way. He said, pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. But the really great men must, I think, have great sadness on earth. How do you hold the tension of all the tov and all of the ra, all of the good and all of the bad in this one life we get to live? Well, throughout Ecclesiastes, Kohelet tells us 3 things that you can't control. The 3 things that you can't control are time, death, and the randomness of life. So the encouragement, if we can't control these three things, if we cannot control time, and we cannot control death, and we cannot control the randomness of life, then perhaps we should stop trying to control things we can't control. And instead enjoy what you've been given as a gift from God. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9 says, what has been is what will be, and what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. See, Kohelet has more wisdom and more riches. He's seen more and done more that can ever be done. And this is what he discovered. He discovered in chapter 2, then I said in my heart, even I, will have the same destiny as a fool. So why have I even become so wise? I said in my heart, this too is hevel. For the wise man together with the fool is not remembered forever, for in the days to come both will be forgotten. Alas, the wise is just like the fool must die. And so I hated life, because the work under the sun was grievous to me. All of it was vapor, hevel, and the chasing after the wind. Gosh, I love this idea. This poetic idea of chasing after the wind is just like trying to catch smoke. You cannot do it. And you exhaust yourself trying to chase the wind and catch smoke. We spend our lives trying to catch smoke and chase the wind instead of trusting the one who created and controls the wind in the first place. Look, the same goes for these Yamim Tovim, these good days that we're approaching, these completely other Shabbats of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. They're given to us by God to live and be reminded that God is not only with us, but that we are with God. And as followers of Yeshua, we have a holy task, a completely other task, to know God and be known by God. That's what we talked about last week. And to enjoy all that God has given us in this life. The good, the bad, the easy, the difficult, the hopeful, the disappointing, the wealth, the poverty, the work, the rest, the joy, the sadness, all kinds of seasons throughout all of our lives. Kohelet said, I applied my heart to seek and examine by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a burdensome task God has given the sons of men, to keep them occupied. But friends, this is the importance of knowing God and being known by God. Because Ecclesiastes teaches us there's three things we can't control. We can't control time, death, or the randomness of life. And so what we should do is stop trying to control things you can't control and enjoy what you've been given as a gift from God. That's why just a couple years ago, a verse of Ecclesiastes became a life verse for me. Ecclesiastes 8 verse 15. So I recommend enjoyment, because there's nothing better for humanity under the sun except to eat, drink, and enjoy it. So this joy will accompany him in his labor all the days of his life that God gives him under the sun. These Moedim, these completely other days, these special days that we're approaching, have unconditional meaningfulness themselves. And they are really inconvenient on purpose. They interrupt our month. They interrupt our week. They interrupt the time on the calendar. We have to plan around these holidays and Shabbat because we have to cease. And in order to pause, you have to plan to pause. And if you plan to pause, it has to be intentional. And so we cease and we pause and we celebrate in the busiest time of the year, in the fall. The 7th month, Tishri, has the most Sabbaths because it's the 7th month. We cease because the 7th day is Kadosh. It's completely other. And we are what God calls a kedoshim, a completely other people. And we have been set free from slavery so we can be free to cease from our work, to celebrate who God is and who we are as our people. Shabbat is looked at as a partnership or part of our friendship with God. It's about presence, being in God's presence, and the simple, frankly, ridiculous idea that the creator of the entire universe wants to be in your presence, wants to be in my presence. See, the rabbis say that Shabbat is an example of the world to come. That one day we'll no longer work and sweat, and the toil of the ground will no longer have to work the ground because of sin. One day we will cease from work and rest in the presence of God. No more tears, no more pain, no more sickness, no more sadness, no more death. Only joy, peace, and rest in God's presence forever. Or as they say in the Sandlot, forever. Heschel said this: Shabbat is a day on which we are called upon to share what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. The writer of Hebrews in the New Testament is a Jewish man writing to Jewish people in the first century who followed Yeshua and faced persecution from the Roman Empire. And he says it like this in a very Jewish way, just like Yeshua, just like the rabbis. So there remains a Shabbat rest for the people of God. For the one who has entered God's rest has also ceased from his own work, just as God did from his. Let us, therefore, make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one may fall through the same pattern of disobedience. Look, friends, I don't know where you're coming from, where you're watching from. I'm not trying to convince you to be Jewish or to live like Jews. According to God, Shabbat is Friday night sundown to Saturday night sundown. We don't believe that everyone has to observe Shabbat, especially the way Orthodox Judaism prescribes it. It's not the specific practices that matter as much as why we do anything that we do. What I'm trying to convince you of is to see creation the way Yeshua does. It doesn't matter what day you attend church, whether Saturday or Sunday, or when you attend a worship service. Attending a worship service is different than the principle of Shabbat. Sunday is, for many Christians, is a different special celebration for the resurrection, which happened on the first day of the week. It's not a replacement for Shabbat. Shabbat is still Shabbat, and Shabbat is for ceasing, because that's what Shabbat means. When Yeshua was breaking some of the Pharisees' man-made rules, he was asked, by what authority could he break the rules they made up? And he said to them, Shabbat was made for man, and not man for Shabbat. So the Son of Man is Lord even of Shabbat. Jesus is saying, Yeshua is saying, I made Shabbat. I ceased on Shabbat. What I'm doing now is not creating. I'm enjoying the creation by ceasing and seeing the goodness in the midst of pain and suffering. What I am doing now is not working. And I gave you days for ceasing that all point to me, if you have ears to hear and eyes to see. See, ceasing from work on the Sabbath is an invitation to share in a glimpse of eternity every 7 days. And for each of these Moedim, for each of these special appointed festivals, if you want to be like Yeshua, then you do what he did. Cease, stop, pause, stop working, find time to rest in all that God has given you, and be grateful for the Tov and the Ra, for the good and the bad, because they all lead to Yeshua. And our Messiah suffered for us so we could feel his love. That's why the writer of Hebrews says, make every effort to enter rest. Because, friends, there's a day coming where rest is all there will be in the presence of the one who formed you in your mother's womb. And that one is calling you back to himself, to return to God. Now, in this one life we have to live, you don't have to wait till eternity to experience rest. Observe the days of rest. Make it a part of your regular cycle. Make it a part of your calendar. It's built into creation so that we can enjoy this Tov Meod, this good, very good creation that God has given us. As Simon and Garfunkel sing, slow down, you're moving too fast. You gotta make the moment last, just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy. And I think this verse describes Shabbat. I've got no deeds to do, no promises to keep. I'm dappled and drowsy and ready to sleep. Let the morning time drop all its petals on me. Life, I love you, all is groovy. Ceasing. It's about ceasing. And it doesn't have to be fake. It's not conjuring up good feelings while we avoid all the hard and difficult feelings. It's living in the tension of the tov and the ra, the good and the bad. Because Ecclesiastes, which we read for Sukkot, which we will read for Sukkot in just a few weeks, teaches us 3 things that you can't control: time, death, and the randomness of life. So, my suggestion to you, stop trying to control things you can't control. Instead, enjoy what you've been given as a gift from God. Enjoy this one life you've been given. It is not meaningless. You just don't get to know the meaning of everything. Instead, there is an unconditional meaningfulness to your existence. And at the same time, it's all hevel. Ceasing from work and resting is a gift from God until the day when we worship Yeshua face to face for the rest of eternity. And the rest of the eternity is like a Shabbat rest that we and all of creation look forward to. So every Shabbat we cease, every week, and during these holy days that we approach, is a time for sharing in the coming Shabbat rest of eternity. In all of the mess, in all of the chaos that is this amazing life, you can cease, stop, pause, enjoy all that God has given you on Shabbat. And these wonderful Yamim Tovim, these good days that we're approaching, because God is not done yet. And my friends, neither are you. I love you guys, and I can't wait to be with you for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. If you can't be with us in person in Seattle, I hope you watch the messages along with us in these Yamim Tovim.